It's time now for the All Things Legal Show. Your host of the show, an attorney with over 20 years' experience practicing personal injury, a graduate of UC Berkeley, Pepperdine Law School, and a partner in the law firm of Ashton and Price. Here's Craig Ashton.
All right. Welcome, values listeners. This is Craig Ashton. The show is All Things Legal. Personal injury attorneys distilling topical events into their legal essence. I'm usually joined by Edward Allen Shady. But based upon the fact that not only do we do this show, but we are actual real trial attorneys, he is, I think, in court today arguing against a summary judgment motion on a complicated premises liability case that ultimately has some nuances to it. And if he gets past the summary judgment, which is essentially going to improve your Jeopardy game, a judge determining that as a matter of law, the case cannot get in front of a jury based upon the fact that juries determine facts as applied to the law, and the judge makes a determination as to whether or not there is a particular law that has been implicated, and if the facts don't meet those elements, then the judge says, let's not waste the time of a jury because it shouldn't even be getting in front of them as a matter of law. So that's what summary judgment is. If Ed wins, which is likely, then ultimately the case will likely resolve for probably 7 figures based upon the fact that it's a serious injury case. And if not, Ed, being the tanner of the legal profession, will appeal. All right, so let me break down the stories for you, determine whether or not you want to spend the next hour of your existence engaged in this experience. So, Insta career implosion, referring to Instagram, a double entendre, a play on words. So, Brandon Aiyuk essentially has been in a dispute with the 49ers now for well over a year in regards to the rehab of a knee injury, and part of his contract indicates that he can go outside to some extent to get medical care to rehabilitate his knee injury, but there is a specific codicil in his contract that says that he has to do some of the rehabbing at the 49ers facility. If you remember Aaron Rodgers, his Achilles tendon rupture, he ended up employing a doctor that was well-respected that gave him a surgery that was a bit experimental. And he had to have that approved because ultimately, if somebody says, look, I'm not going to go the normal route of having my knee repaired, I'm going to hang upside down from the Bay Bridge for a couple weeks, and then I'm going to go to a shaman in the deepest rainforest of Peru, and that's how I'm going to treat my knee injury, then at that point, the team has something to say about that because the health of the individual ultimately calls into question their guaranteed money. And if they're not following certain rules in regards to medical care, they don't have free form to treat their problems the way they see fit. And that's where Brandon Aiyuk has got a problem. So instead of basically saying what we tell our clients when they sign up with Ashton and Price, that if anybody contacts you, do what you've always wanted to do and just say, call my lawyer, which he should have been saying. He's basically, let me go on Facebook and Instagram. So I'm going to walk you through about 8 different posts going all the way back to June where he's insulting the team, insulting the coach, essentially calling out his former roommate, I think, or teammate at ASU, and show you why these have legal consequence, and also as a cautionary tale as do not negotiate your contract on social media. Very bad idea. Also bad idea, Paul Pelosi charged with hit and run in California. So we talked about last week when ultimately Paul Pelosi, I think he was driving a Maserati, hit a car and caused such an impact to the vehicle that the rear end of the vehicle that he hit was quote-unquote major damage, which is usually not listed unless it's really bad. I've seen minor impacts. You look at the picture and go, wow, that looks pretty bad, but it's called minor. When they write down major, that basically means that a seasoned law enforcement officer has taken a look at the vehicle and noted that this is a pretty significant impact to the vehicle, causing lots of damage. So much so that the impact knocked the vehicle that was parked onto the sidewalk. And then Paul Pelosi drove away, and then his car became disabled. So the question was whether or not Paul Pelosi would actually just get kind of a warning, or whether or not and a ticket, or whether or not he would actually face criminal charges. Well, it turns out the district attorney in Napa County may have been listening to the show because charges have been filed. I have a neighbor, Dennis. We call him the Viscount of Vallejo Street. He's been there for years. He knows the Pelosi family, knows Paul and Nancy, has dinner with him, from time to time. Says they're super nice people, and I don't doubt that. But ultimately, when you're, and we had a little bit of debate about this, I said, when you're a public figure like Paul Pelosi, you might be a nice guy. But, part of the way that a system like ours breaks down, which is so important to have the rule of law followed, and when you're a famous person and it looks as though you're getting favorable treatment, then those who are not getting favorable treatment start to basically, hem and haw naturally, and probably rightfully so, about the application of the law in a blind way. Justice is supposed to be blind. So Paul Pelosi being charged with a misdemeanor. We'll walk you through that. Then, for the first time that I've seen, Mayor Daniel Lurie in San Francisco is now officially speaking out about Waymo and autonomous vehicles in general. So I've been watching Waymo, which is basically cracked the code for autonomous vehicle, essentially level 4 driving, where they can do it without human assistance in a geofenced area, which in this case is most of the San Francisco Bay Area, and geofence in certain areas where they can't go, like into the San Francisco International Airport. They can drop you off outside at the rental car area, basically. So anyway, the idea is that there's been a lot of leeway and really not a whole lot of pushback from local government in San Francisco in regards to allowing this technology to develop. And then we've had a couple of snafus regarding a power outage where a lot of the cars got flummoxed, and basically the flashing red lights, they basically stopped in traffic. Just the other day, I was walking down Grand Street on the weekend. It was during the World Cup, and Maggie McGreary's, which is on Grand Street right next to the Green Street pub and right next to Tupelo's on Grand Street. Ultimately, it's one way, a lot of people waiting to watch the soccer match, and a Waymo is stopped in traffic, and there's a big backup because somebody had opened up the trunk. And when you open up the trunk on a Waymo, it won't move. So because I've been paying attention, I've watched Waymo for a while, I knew that to be the case. Everybody's walking by, so I just walked by, shut the trunk, and then the car started going again. And actually, a bunch of people started clapping. The guy behind gave me a thumbs up. So, because a lot of people don't understand the technology. So the point is that is a glitch. And, opening up a trunk and it basically being stopped there until a human being interacts with a vehicle is a glitch, which is, all fine and dandy if you're basically not getting a great seat to watch a soccer game, at least, on Grand Street. But at the end of the day, if there's a first responder that needs to get somebody who needs immediate medical attention, or there's a fire, et cetera, and they're blocking the way, that's real problematic. And if somebody, has a really bad medical event as a result of being blocked by an autonomous vehicle because it won't move, that's not great, and that would lead to probably a knee-jerk, basically legal application of restrictions on this technology. So Daniel Lurie is basically saying, now prove it before you deploy it. And I think that's talking to Waymo and also to Tesla, which is not nearly as advanced as Waymo. And then we've got Zoox, which is cool. Looks like a push me, pull you. When you see, you don't really know what direction it's going because it doesn't really have a front or a back. It's just a square. All right, or a rectangle. So anyway, I'll walk you through that. And then we've got NHTSA is actually getting involved with manufacturers of autonomous vehicles and talking about basically having better disclosure as to the real safety aspects. Because when you're dealing with safety, and Tesla kind of exaggerating about their cars are 10 times safer when it's in autonomous or full self-driving mode or autonomous vehicle mode, ultimately you start to bump into the Elizabeth Holmes area, which goes beyond puffery and goes into public safety. And now when NHTSA is getting involved, so I'll talk about that. Then what qualifies as an e-bike? I think this is interesting because you see all these e-bikes, and a lot of times I see it as a personal injury attorney. I see obviously somebody's like 12 years old on what's really an electric motorcycle, classified as an e-bike. When you're under 18, you got to wear a helmet. So we'll walk you through what e-bikes, what qualifies as an e-bike and what qualifies as a electric motorcycle. And then you'll be surprised about the rules that apply to electric scooters because they're all over San Francisco. And then we've got AI Judge Judy. So finally, artificial intelligence that we can all agree upon is benefiting society. AI Judge Judy, I asked Claude to say, hey, in the voice of Judge Judy, write a response to drunk Florida man abandons airboat in front of sheriff substation. He made some very poor decisions. And then 3 nude women air drying at Florida rest stop before chase, police say. And the drunken bicyclist arrested at Florida Taco Bell drive-thru at 3 o'clock in the morning. What can go wrong? Well, guess what? AI Judge Judy weighs in on the legal vagaries, the inflagrante delicto behavior. Florida man, it's worth sticking around for that. We come back, we'll go ahead and talk about Brandon Aiyuk, Insta career implosion. Stay with us. Injured and you're considering an LA law firm looking to charge you 45% to 50% in attorney's fees? That's overcharging. Ashton & Price has been around for over 25 years, and I can tell you no matter how complicated your injury case, you should never be charged 45% or 50% in attorney's fees ever. Direct, experienced, unrelenting, and honest local representation matters. It's called home court advantage for a reason. Ashton & Price serious local attorneys for serious people with serious injuries. So for the best local advice, don't think twice. Call Ashton & Price.
What happens when the direct nephew of George Washington matches legal wits with the most prominent shady attorney on the planet? I'll tell you, the All Things Legal Show. Decades of legal expertise distilling the latest sports and celebrity legal battles, the Constitution, AI, and the 1,000 ways Florida man flaunts the law while in flagrante. In the immortal words of the Princess Brides Vicini, Socrates, Plato, morons. Join Craig Ashton and Edward Shady on Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, and Apple Podcasts, and listen to the All Things Legal Show anytime. You've been served.
All right, we are back. When I say we are back, I will use that in the common sense because ultimately we means me, Craig Fontaine, Ashton, Edward Allen Shady. Ultimately, a shady attorney who typically regales us with his legal stylings is actually in court this morning on a summary judgment motion, fighting the good fight. So these are the things that we do because we're artisanal in the way we approach personal injury. A lot of personal injury law firms don't really talk to a lawyer and ultimately have a paralegal do most of the work. Our firm's totally different. We have lots of assistants that make our jobs a lot easier in regards to information collection, but the distillation of that information and the application of it towards the result of the imperfect remedy of money and as much as possible, which is all we can get in the legal system in terms of justice when it comes to personal injury cases under the common law of negligence in most cases, is what we're limited to is the imperfect remedy of money. Many clients, unfortunately, now I have clients that are basically trying to help their son through a very difficult secondary brain injury, and they're focusing on helping him rehab and making sure that his health is maintained so he can get the best recovery possible. So we are paying attention to all the legal issues. We have multiple clients, unfortunately, that have died in basically assisted living settings where they develop bed sores and their loved ones die. We have many cases where people are involved in auto accidents and they have significant spine injuries where they end up needing reconstructive spine surgery, broken necks, broken backs, etc., fractured femurs, comminuted open fractures of tibia and fibulas, and motorcycle accidents. Very serious business, and they all would rather have a magic wand instead of the millions of dollars that ultimately are the outcomes we typically get in cases like that if all of the facts line up appropriately and the defendant has the ability to compensate our clients. But the imperfect remedy of money is all we can get, not a magic wand, because they'd love to waive that, and then if they win their case, they can waive it and the loss never occurred. That would be justice. That would get them back to happiness, hope, and joy in a perfect setting, but we don't have a perfect setting, so we get the imperfect remedy of money. That's what we do on in our careers, but not what we do on the show, because the show actually allows me to have a little bit of fun, get into some intellectual pathways that have nothing to do with personal injury. Unless, of course, you're thinking about the personal injury that Brandon Aiyuk is doing to himself as a result of going on Instagram and trying to negotiate out of his contract. Wow. This is really, social media is kind of a new thing. It's only been around really in really important, really ubiquitous form now for the last decade or so. So you would just think that people would use common sense. And if you had a group of representatives, Brandon Aiyuk would say, hey, I'm not going to talk to you about this. I'm going to keep it close to the vest. Call my lawyers or call my agent. But he's not doing that. So Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver for the 49ers, is publicly criticizing the San Francisco 49ers, their coach, and others as he seeks a departure from the team while remaining on the roster ahead of training camp. So for context, knee injury, ultimately went through rehab but didn't follow through on going through rehab, a portion of it at the 49er facility, decided that he's going to do it on his own. He says that's how you treat everybody else. I don't know whether or not that's true, and that's me speaking. But bottom line, the contract seems to clearly say that, look, if you get injured, these are the parameters of which you must follow. You're free to follow some more experimental avenues of recovery, but there's certain core aspects of your recovery that you got to follow through with, and maybe a certain orthopedic surgeon, maybe a certain type of procedure, And also it includes rehabilitation, which includes doing some of the rehabilitation at the 49er facility. He didn't do that, and so the 49ers said, look, you breached the contract. So they voided $27 million of guaranteed money. So, big mistake. I mean, all you got to do is go follow through with physical therapy. We always tell our clients, look, if you're injured, use the gift of medical care. Follow through. Because if you don't, and then in the end, we're trying to create a story where the Hansel and Gretel mythology usually is pretty apropos, where, if you started out at a point and you're missing breadcrumbs throughout the process, it's hard to connect where you are as to where you began. So use the gift of medical care. And it looks like Brandon Aiyuk decided to use the gift of medical care outside of the requirements that were under his contract, which there are consequences. So instead of basically acting like an adult, he essentially thought it would be a very good idea to kind of go on social media and through a series of posts, some of them, Instagram is basically digital recordings, video with, audio, and just not smart. So on June 6th, he posts himself wearing a Commander's hat, as if there was any doubt which team Aiyuk had his eye on whenever his post-49ers career got underway. He put that to rest with an Instagram story on June 6th, in which he was wearing a Washington Commanders cap. So, he's still on the 49ers, still basically on the roster, still under contract. He's posting on social media that ultimately he wants to go play for the Commanders, and he eyes a reunion with quarterback Jaden Daniels, with whom he was a teammate at Arizona State in 2019. So then he also goes on later on June 6th. He basically posts another video on Instagram, and he says, the truth is they scared. They scared. They know how I get. They're going to say, oh, yeah, B.A., Brandon Aiyuk did this, B.A. did that. You know that expletive, allegedly. But what they're going to say is B.A. sucks at football because they know how I get. Man, stop running from the belt coming. So essentially what he's saying is that he's going to punish the 49ers. Any of us who grew up in a different generation, we knew what that meant when wait till your dad gets home. There usually was some sort of wardrobe accessory that helped keep the pants up, but that was used in a different fashion to essentially allow for the dictates of parental direction to have a bite, which was being spanked with a belt. Usually, at least in my case, I had fair warning, so I would be able to don several different layers of undergarments to lessen the blow of the impact of the blunt force trauma of the belt that typically followed as a result of my dad getting home from a long day at work and then having my mother tell him that essentially I needed to be disciplined. So I think when Brandon Aiyuk says the belt is coming, that's what he's referring to. And it doesn't go over well. First of all, it's not very professional. So, I mean, if you're trying to get onto another team and you're doing that, it's just going to look, all right, maybe this guy's gifted, but he's got a real problem following direction. And, you can be as gifted as you like, but if Leonardo, da Vinci wants to paint basically, the dogs playing poker, and you can't teach him how to coach him how to paint the Mona Lisa, then his skills basically lost. So we got a guy who's got Leonardo da Vinci's skills in football, but he's basically looks like he's uncoachable. Then on June 9th, Aiyuk slams dumb 49ers. Quote, you want to know why they really mad, though? They're mad because they're stupid and dumb. They're mad that they paid me $50 million in 8 months and they voided my guarantees for 2027, and I'm about to be on a new team in 2027. And that was June 9th. So this is another Instagram post. A very, childish. Doesn't bode well for him signing a new contract. It's going to cost him millions and millions of dollars. It may be satisfying to do that in real time, but from a purely legal perspective, it's going to have significant impact on his new contract. Then on June 27th, he goes on Instagram again. He says, take me off your bum F team. TF is hold up. We is not cool. We won't be cool, and I will never be stepping in that building, Levi Stadium. And that was now June 27th. So again, not a very good idea. July 2nd, he goes on basically to then call into question the National Football League's Players Association, essentially saying they don't have his back either. So now he's insulting the team, and then the National Football League's Players Association, which essentially enforces contracts and makes sure that all the rules that have been negotiated on behalf of the players are upheld, and now he's insulting them. at MFLPA. Can I get a fresh set of eyes on this case? Because the ones on it right now, obviously sleeping on the job, and they're saying all this because I missed rehab. No, I didn't miss rehab. I just didn't rehab with you all. So, yeah, maybe that's true. But if the contract says this is a part of your contract says that you must do these things. It's not you may, it's you must. And he doesn't do it. It's clear. It's a clear violation, and that's how the contract got voided. So now he's saying not only is the team a bunch of dummies and idiots, and he's not cool with them, and he rehab, but they're idiots and they don't know how to rehab. But now he's calling in the group that ultimately would have his back in regards to contract negotiation to indicate that maybe it was unconscionable or not following the rules of the players union. Now he's insulting them. Not a very good idea. So now he's got July 4th. He takes a jab at Jaden Daniels, who's a guy he played football with. Basically, apparently Jaden Daniels is not responding to him, which very smart. Jaden Daniels goes, look, I'm not engaging. I'm not getting involved. I've got a contract. I'm not going to affect my ability to earn a living, and I'm not going to engage with somebody on social media in regards to private contractual issues based upon my agreement with the NFL, my team, and the National Football League Players Association. So Brandon Aiyuk says, you're on my team now. You're on my team now. You follow my rules. Boy, I'm a grown man, not a boy. You're going to have to stop running behind your mama. I might believe what you're and I might believe what you're talking about. So I'm not exactly sure the grammar was up to and the syntax was up to the task of really communicating what he had to say, other than he's not happy with his friend, Mr. Daniels, who he played football with at ASU. And then July 8th, he goes on again, Instagram story, a jab at Daniels again. He said, I don't do the internet, bro, referring to Daniels. Super smart. Good job, Mr. Daniels. That's not Jack Daniels talking. That's basically Jaden Daniels talking. And maybe Jack Daniels is talking for Brandon Aiyuk. Who knows? He said, I don't do the internet, bro. Hit my phone if you got to talk to me, bro. You got my number. I called. He didn't answer. Hit my phone, bro. It's important. It's the money on the line. So now he's basically trying to get his friend to respond to him in a very sensitive contract negotiation setting via social media. And then another quote, it'd be like BA in his social media antics. Expletive, I got to get paid somehow because employer holding me captive without paying, at least social media paying. I'll tell you what, if I get back in the NFL, man, I'm still going to be my F on social media. So bottom line, that just tells the NFL, any team, look, this guy's basically not controllable. You're going on social media. It just, when you got multi-million dollars on the line here, very competitive system where, you're basically just a bat squeak ahead of the person behind you, and it's super competitive and it's a meritocracy. And with all things being equal, you got a guy acting like this, you're basically, this is a death knell for you. I don't even think the Canadian Football League, because we don't have a great relationship with Canada right now. They're probably not even going to take you. All right, and then the last one, this is just a couple days ago on July 18th. Coach want me back so I can draw all the coverage and make it easy for the guys that remind him of himself back in his heyday. He posted on his Instagram story, seemingly referencing Shanahan, who played wide receiver at the University of Texas between 1999 and 2002. It's unclear what Aiyuk means by guys that remind him of himself. So essentially, he's basically saying that Coach Shanahan is basically trying to get him back on the team so he can pull all the coverages off the other players that are on the team, that are receivers that aren't as good as him, just like Shanahan, who basically wasn't that good as a wide receiver, to make them all look better. So now he's upsetting his coach directly. He's basically calling out the other receivers on the team, indicating that they're not as good as him. The only reason that he would come back to make them look better because they're not able to do it on their own. Just a super bad idea. So Instagram, social media, the instant, basically career implosion of Brandon Aiyuk. Not going to end well. Contract says what it says. He's already lost $27 million. If the 49ers want to keep the guy around, he's stuck. He's basically stuck in that contract. And I don't think the NFL Players Association is going to step up because he's insulting them as well. So if this is a tale of what not to do in regards to negotiating any contract, anything, if you got a dispute with your wife or your husband, do not go on Instagram. Keep it to yourself. Maybe talk to one of your trusted advisors, or, if you got a lawyer friend, call them. But don't do what Brandon Aiyuk is doing. When we come back, Paul Pelosi charged with hit and run in California by the Napa district attorney. And then Waymo basically has finally got the attention of Daniel Lurie, the mayor of San Francisco, and other autonomous vehicles, and now a little bit of pushback. And the first time I've seen this, stay with us. When a person is seriously injured, there's no substitute for the personal legal relationship offered by the local NorCal firm of Ashton and Price. From the first attorney meeting, every important decision is made with a direct consultation with, and I can't believe I have to say this, a real, live, experienced, flesh and blood local attorney. It's called Home Court Advantage for a reason. Ashton and Price, serious local attorneys for serious people with serious injuries with no fee until we win. For the best local advice, don't think twice. Call Ashton and Price.
What happens when the direct nephew of George Washington matches legal wits with the most prominent shady attorney on the planet? I'll tell you, the All Things Legal Show. Decades of legal expertise distilling the latest sports and celebrity legal battles, the Constitution, AI, and the 1,000 ways Florida man flaunts the law while in flagrante. In the immortal words of the Princess Brides Vicini, Socrates, Plato, morons. Join Craig Ashton and Edward Shady on Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, and Apple Podcasts, and listen to the All Things Legal Show anytime. You've been served.
All right, we are back. When I say we are back, I mean I am back, Craig Fontaine Ashton, on a show we called All Things Legal. Personal injury attorneys distilling topical events into their legal essence. Essentially working on getting got a bunch of shows to go up on YouTube. So they are not up yet. So they will be probably there's about 15 of them about ready to go up. So if you want to take a look to see how we can put ourselves at least on digital recording in video as we used to know it, then I think that would probably be instructive. I like to wear bow ties, and ultimately Ed is a former Division I college water polo player. I'm swimming Alcatraz on I think it's August 8th. For the 6th time, so you can kind of see what a lawyer looks like that swims Alcatraz, and we like to say we swim with the sharks, but they give us professional courtesy. All right, so basically, Paul Pelosi, famous Nancy Pelosi's husband, also very good with money, has lots of success with investment banking, and had a lot of success. Seems like a pretty good guy, at least according to my neighbor who knows him well. He's super nice, not pretentious, and kind of a really nice family person who's committed to the community. But we all make mistakes. I mean, look at Brandon and Aiyuk, holy moly. But Paul Pelosi has had some problems recently with driving, especially in Napa. He got a DUI in 2022, and there was a leaving the scene aspect of it, which did not enhance the charges, and he was put on probation for 3 years. But that particular time frame in terms of probation, where you have a lot more latitude in taking away people's liberty and curtailing what they get to do as citizens freely, has passed. So he just got in a hit-and-run accident about 2 weeks ago in Napa, and I've seen this a lot in our practice because I've been a personal injury lawyer for decades, started practicing law in San Francisco on Montgomery Street. When Melvin Belli was still practicing, and in Arnold Laub, I worked in his office at 807 Montgomery Street. And, you see a lot of things over that time, and you do see people leaving scenes, and it's very, very important that you don't do that. If somebody's injured and you leave the scene, it can be a felony right off the bat. So you're just basically going from a civil cause of action for money damages to potential felony, losing your liberty. And then once you get a felony, there's all kinds of aspects that are attached to that in regards to trying to get employment, et cetera. It's not great. So you don't want to do that. And you also don't want to leave the scene when there's property damage. It's just a matter of somebody damages a very valuable piece of property that you own, and they leave the scene and don't leave just the elements of, here's my name, here's my address, here's my contact, here's my insurance information. If you can't find somebody, just leave a note. That's it. Simple as that. You do that, then you meet the elements and you're fine. In this particular case, the evidence is that Mr. Pelosi basically hit a car, hit it so hard that it basically major damage, knocked it up onto the curb. And then when I read that he said that he got out and he couldn't tell what he hit, and so he just kept driving, not credible. Not credible. So at that point, my feeling was, just intuitively, look, you can't be doing that. So either you are too old, and we're not to say that, we want to give you the benefit of the doubt. There are people that I have a friend, Richard's 90 years old. And man, he walks all over San Francisco. He's totally fit. Came over to a party that I had in San Francisco and was drinking, top shelf scotch, and, no problem. 90. The guy basically is super solid. He's got all of his faculties. He's fully fit to drive a car. G-Man, who's our producer, fully fit to drive a car. Basically in the same age range as Paul Pelosi, and some others aren't. love or hate Joe Biden. I mean, he just didn't seem to me like he was doing great. And, when you get to be a certain age, there should be some restrictions. I mean, we have it for pilots and it's also for driver's licenses. So in this particular case, there's two issues. One is either you are cognus mentis and you knew what you did and you left, and then that's a misdemeanor, or you are old enough whereby you probably don't have all your faculties and you probably shouldn't have a driver's license. So if they weren't going to charge him and just leave this up as a simple ticket, I just thought that would send the wrong message that the rich and powerful, basically those who have gotten a lot of their power and their riches from basically being public servants, which, is kind of a disconnect if you're a public servant, but you made all this money as a result of insider information, which is not illegal, but, basically gives you an opportunity to make all this money that we don't. And you're essentially serving us, but you're using that particular codicil, that essentially loophole to get insider information, which of course you're going to make money on a company that you're proposing legislation that's going to help an industry. You can invest in advance, and it's almost a sure thing. I mean, it's just a sure bet. So they've got all this money, and he leaves the scene. So I thought for sure he should get charged. And I talked to my neighbor. He said, I just think he's a good guy, and I'm not sure I agree with that. So I was interested to see what the Napa District Attorney would do, and just got announced in San Francisco Chronicle. Pelosi, 86 of St. Helena, was charged with a misdemeanor hit and run. He was additionally charged with the infraction of making an unlawful turn, according to the Napa County District Attorney. So I was going to have Tatiana on the show this morning, who works in our office. She used to be the Nevada City Deputy District Attorney. So they're the ones that make the charging decision. So the way it works is that you got the police show up, their initial law enforcement. They basically do an investigation. They make a recommendation for a DMV notification. In other words, issue a citation, which goes to the DMV. And that's when you get points on your record and ultimately have to go to driving school or basically traffic school. And then you can get it taken off if you haven't done traffic school within the allotted time. And then there's also a criminal issue. So sometimes a traffic violation through the DMV can also be a criminal issue through the district attorney's office, because you violated the rights of the people of California, and then a criminal charge needs to be brought. And so if the recommendation from the sheriff is to the district attorney, I think we have enough evidence to charge this particular misdemeanor hit and run, then it's up to the district attorney's office as to whether or not they want to actually make the charge. They can use prosecutorial discretion and not do it. But in this case, they did it. And I think it sends a message, which is a good one. You're not above the law. California is known as a very liberal state, and these are basically liberal royalty here. And when you send a message that people that are super connected, about as connected as you can get in our state, still basically have the application of the law in cases where it should be applied, then I think that sends a message that the rule of law is still basically alive and thriving in our country and in our state. So essentially, a witness reported that the crash to law enforcement. Alleged Pelosi was driving north at the time of the crash and briefly stopped, then drove away. According to the sheriff's office, the parked car sustained, quote unquote, major rear damage, and his front tire was forced onto the curb. It's not the first time Pelosi had a hit and run with authorities. In 2022, he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges of driving under the influence in Napa County. He was sentenced to 5 days in jail and 3 years probation. In announcing Friday's criminal charges against Pelosi, the district attorney, Allison Haley, said it included answers frequently asked questions such as why Pelosi was not charged with DUI and why he was still allowed to drive. And she basically said this, quote, the district attorney's office has an ethical obligation to file only those charges that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt based upon the available evidence. No evidence indicating the defendant was driving under the influence was presented to our office. So I think that's fair. I mean, if it wasn't, it wasn't. I mean, bottom line is evidence. And if there wasn't any evidence, regardless of what occurred, you have to basically put on some blindfolds and treat this person just like anybody else. So in this particular case, they're just saying, look, it just spreads credulity, especially with the witness statements and the major damage to the car that you couldn't have seen it. And the alternative is that if it turns out that there is an issue in regarding to the mental and physical ability to drive, then instead of basically going through the misdemeanor charges for hit and run, there might be an application to the DMV for them to do an investigation to take away his driving privileges. So either way, there's going to be a penalty. The penalty would probably fit what occurred. Thank goodness nobody was in the car, because then at that point it would have been a felony hit and run, totally different issue. In these cases, usually you don't see that unless there's serious injury. And in this case, it was an unoccupied parked car. But the law is the law, so you basically got to follow it. All right, Waymo, I've been watching this for a while because I have a place in North Beach slash basically right on Vallejo Street on Telegraph Hill. And below my apartment, my wife's apartment, ultimately we could see a driving structure or a parking structure where Waymo had been basically parking for years. And so I would watch them going back about 5 or 6 years, kind of going through the streets of San Francisco and kind of nervously, as a machine might do, make a left-hand turn. And, I would watch it as a personal injury lawyer, and I was going to, there's a lot of kind of fits and starts in regards to the turning motion. It doesn't look as though it's confident mechanically to make these particular movements. And it was kind of learning. And over time, I noticed, hey, I drive the vehicles and they make left-hand turns kind of more aggressively in front of other cars when they're merging. They basically go quickly to the speed limit. They kind of do California stops, which I just noticed it because you drive me around, it basically slows and then goes instead of basically stops completely, which has got to be built in. But the idea is that in terms of understanding the general dynamic of transportation, getting people safely in normal situations, it does a great job. But there are now situations that ultimately when you've got either emergency personnel showing up, like when there's a power outage or like when there's a fire or an accident. There was an accident a few weeks ago where essentially there was many cars involved and the Waymo basically kind of would not move and it was blocking the fire truck coming in. The fire truck was able to go around it, but they had a difficult time getting in touch with Waymo to get the car to move. So, that's a problem, and you can't have that because right now it's just basically an inconvenience. And many times I'll notice because I'll be walking on Grant Street from basically Union Square, and Grant Street's really beautiful. And plus, my wife has me go by Cartier, and it's on Grant Street and leads up to Post. You hang a right, and you're at Neiman Marcus. So the idea is that when you walk back, you go through Chinatown, and so it's a one-way street. And a lot of times these Waymos, they get kind of flummoxed with all the different pedestrians, a lot of tourists, and you get a lot of honking. And, it's kind of a nuisance, but it's not anything that's going to be a safety issue. But when you got these breakdowns during power outages or when there's a fire or during the 4th of July, they're running over fireworks and then basically becoming disabled, and then you can't get in touch with these vehicles, especially now when you've got Waymo, which seems to have cracked it. Then you've also got Zoox and Neuro and Apollo Auto, and you've got Tesla. It's kind of the Wild West. And so Dan Lurie basically had been the new mayor. I think he's doing a great job balancing the charm of San Francisco with basically getting people off the streets that are high on fentanyl and also basically having essentially a 9-story limit to new apartments. So you're not basically taking away the charm of all these beautiful views. Instead of going, Hong Kong, they're going basically Paris or London. If you're flying to these big cities or Barcelona, you'll notice that the skyline or the cityscape is basically the same height. So they don't block views from certain great things like the Sagrada Familia or the Eiffel Tower or, basically Big Ben, et cetera. In San Francisco, there's so many vista sites where you've got either the Transamerica building, which is the pure, basically the Eiffel Tower of, North America. You've got Alcatraz, you've got the Bay Bridge, you've got the Golden Gate Bridge. You basically got, all these beautiful views, Alcatraz, et cetera. And you don't want to block those. And so I think Daniel Lurie is doing a good job of keeping this, abundance and yes, in my backyard stuff, building all these, high-rise apartments that are going to make a very small number of people a lot of money and probably create maybe 300 affordable housing units, and the rest are going to go to, wealthy people that don't even live in San Francisco. I think he's doing a good job, but he's basically finally said, in terms of what's going on with these autonomous vehicles, prove it before you deploy it. Before deploying autonomous vehicles, autonomous vehicle operators must demonstrate major event operational readiness through testing and exercises. So as a result of that, there is now a proposed Senate Bill 1246, which essentially has a system of fines, 5,000, 10,000, and then requiring that the vehicles are either disabled, there's either a technician that comes out for the company, or ultimately has a system where first responders can push the vehicle out of the way to make sure that people's health, safety, and welfare aren't impacted by this particular technology. I think it's a good idea. Daniel Lurie's finally speaking out, and now it's going in front of the legislature in Sacramento. to determine whether or not there's going to be some rules that apply that have a little bit of have some penalties involved that can impact the operation of these vehicles, because there's a difference between a nuisance and basically a public safety risk. And a nuisance is, the trunk that I was telling you about that's open on Grant Street. I close it and it moves on. So, if you're late for, seeing the opening kick with Argentina in the World Cup finals against Spain, that's one thing. But if you're basically having a heart attack and the first responder can't get to you because a Waymo's not moving because the trunk's open, that's a whole different ballgame. And also, NHTSA's taking a look at it now, too, to hold the manufacturers responsible for some of their safety claims, going from basically puffery into Elizabeth Holmes, where when you say that you can do it, but there's health and safety risk and people are being hurt, then that's a totally different ballgame. It could be criminal liability going forward. All right, we come back, we'll finish up with that, and then we'll get into AI Judge Judy. Florida man stories, there's 3 of them. You got to stay for this. They're funny, they're instructive, and also, AI can do some good, at least in illuminating the vagaries of Florida.
A personal injury claim is not a lottery prize, and it is never a joke. Whether or not you've been injured in a slip and fall, pedestrian, bicycle, auto, Uber, Lyft, or big rig accident, you need serious, experienced local legal counsel. At Ashton and Price, we have successfully represented Northern California injury victims for over 25 years. The consultation is free, and there is never a fee until we win. And between you and me, we win a lot. So remember, for the best advice, don't think twice. Call Ashton and Price. What happens when the direct nephew of George Washington matches legal wits with the most prominent shady attorney on the planet? I'll tell you, the All Things Legal Show. Decades of legal expertise distilling the latest sports and celebrity legal battles, the Constitution, AI, and the 1,000 ways Florida man flaunts the law while in flagrante. In the immortal words of the Princess Brides Vicini, Socrates, Plato, morons. Join Craig Ashton and Edward Shady on Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, and Apple Podcasts, and listen to the All Things Legal Show anytime. You've been served.
All right, I am back. When I say I am back, Craig Fontaine Ashton, usually joined by Edward Allen Shady, colleague, friend, fellow Ironman finisher, swimmer of Alcatraz. He is in court, so there's not a shady attorney give you some legal direction. Just me, Craig Fontaine Ashton. Go to opponent face to a voice. Go to ashtonandprice.com. Sell the multi-million-dollar outcomes. We're artisanal. We curate cases directly with our decades of legal experience. Makes a big difference. As Polybius said, the first step is 50% of the outcome. So if you go in the wrong direction early, I get these cases that come in, and their cases are so improperly handled that many times we turn them down because it's just like jumping into a burning legal building that didn't have to be lit on fire. And it makes it very difficult to reconnoiter your way out of it legally and then go on the right pathway. So do yourself a favor, get an artisanal law firm like Ashton and Price involved if you got personal injury. The consultation's free, and there's never a fee until we win. All right. So just real quickly on e-bikes, just so you know, there's basically 3 e-bike classifications. And the way you know it's an e-bike, it's got pedals. You've got a class 1, it's got pedals, top speed, 20 miles an hour. You don't have to wear a helmet if you're over 18. If you're under 18, you always got to wear a helmet. It's got no throttle, and ultimately you don't have to register it, and you don't need a driver's license. Probably going to be covered under your homeowner's insurance. Class 2 it also has pedals. It has a top speed of 20 miles an hour like the Class 1, and basically no driver's license. And it's got a throttle, which is different from the Class 1, which has no throttle. So you got a throttle on Class 2, but it's got pedals, 20 miles an hour. Top speed, no throttle on the Class 1. Class 3 basically is 28 miles an hour. It's got pedals, so that's what keeps it in the e-bike. And it's got basically goes up to 28 miles an hour. And it's a helmet's required for all riders. And the bottom line is you don't have to register it, but you got to be 16 years or older to ride it. And then the other ones are basically e-motorbikes. So they go, speed varies, there's no pedals. So anytime you see no pedals, like on an e-scooter or an e-moto, those are not considered bikes, and the rules are completely different. And if you have a electric motorcycle, essentially, which is no pedals, at that point you need a driver's license and registration. So if you got pedals on one of these e-bikes, then you don't have to have a driver's license or registration. But the one that goes 28 miles an hour, you have to be over 16 to ride it. All right, so that's kind of the rules. There's some basically legal, there's a Senate bill in the making to kind of help redefine this because it's kind of confusing. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about AI Judge Judy. We got 3 stories. Essentially, I take temporal, recent, and ultimately real Florida man stories, and I write into AI's Claude and on Anthropic, right in the voice of Judge Judy. And this is what we got. AI Judge Judy weighs in on 3 nude women were air drying at Florida rest stop before chase. Let me put my glasses on here so I can make sure I do this justice. All right. You were air drying at a rest stop on Interstate 75, putting on suntan lotion in your birthday suit at 11 o'clock in the morning. Do I have a stupid face? Does my face look stupid to you? Because that's the only way you sell me that story, and I'm not buying what you're selling. And here's what I know. I know it because I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. When the police pull up to a rest stop and you decide the smart move is to jump in the car and floor it into oncoming traffic, you were not showering. And as people who were just got out of the shower did not lead a highway chase. They put on a robe. They say, "Officer, I'm sorry." They don't enter the oncoming lane of traffic and make 11 other drivers swerve into the grass. You nearly ran over a pedestrian. You nearly ran over the officer who had to jump back like a matador. And then you call the chase off. You get spotted at a convenience store, and then you run again. That's not a mistake. A mistake happens. The second time, that's a decision. That's a lifestyle. When they finally stop, stick your tires, and your car is sitting there flat as a pancake. What do you geniuses do? You interlock your arms like you're at a slumber party. Ma'am, this isn't a group hug. The police broke the windows. There was a taser involved. There was a metal bat. Somebody brought a bat to a suntan lotion emergency. And there was marijuana in the car, which I suspect explains the quality of the decision-making from top to bottom. Here's my ruling. I don't believe you. I don't believe you when I started. I don't believe you now. And if you come back tomorrow, I still won't believe you. Beauty may be skin deep, but stupid ladies goes all the way to the bone. Case dismissed, and put your clothes on. All right. A drunk Florida man abandons airboat in front of sheriff's substation. Quote, he made some very poor decisions. Here's what AI Judge Judy had to say. You're 43 years old. You're a grown man with a job, a mechanic, a man who works with his hands, who presumably owns a calendar and knows what day it is. And you decided that Sunday night was a night to blow a .34 into a machine. Let me put that in English for the people at home. 4 times the legal limit. 4 times. The sheriff said he doesn't know how you were walking. I'll go on one better. I don't know how you were breathing. People go to the hospital at that number. You went driving with a boat. Not even a small boat, an airboat. The kind with a giant fan on the back. You loaded a whole airboat onto a trailer, and you got behind the wheel of an F-150, while you were seeing 3 of everything, and you towed it down a public road until it slid right off the trailer and parked yourself, of all the places on God's green earth, directly in front of a sheriff's substation. Could not have picked a worse address if you used a map. That's not bad luck, sir. That's the universe telling you to stay home. Now, here's the part that makes me want to reach across this bench. When the boat falls off, does a reasonable person go, you know what? I've had a rough night. Let me quietly deal with this. No, you drive away, you leave the boat blocking the road, and then when you come back for it, instead of being grateful nobody got killed, you start screaming at your friend, the one man kind enough to help you, about how he's tying it wrong. The audacity. You're 4 times the legal limit, and you're a supervisor now. And the deputy tells you to calm down. What do? You puff your chest out, you ball up your fists, and you charge at law enforcement. On a scale of 1 to jail, sir, you scored a jail. Don't tell me you messed up. I hate that phrase. Messed up is when you forget your anniversary. This is a documented 4-alarm catastrophe with a boat in it. Beauty is skin deep. .34 goes right to the liver. Take the plea. Case dismissed. All right. AI Judge Judy, drunken bicyclist arrested at Florida Taco Bell drive-thru. 3 o'clock in the morning. Let's just start there. Because the hour tells me everything. Nothing good has ever happened in a drive-thru at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's ever made a wise, sober, life-affirming choice at 3 a.m. at a Taco Bell lane. And you, sir, are the proof. You rode a bicycle up to the drive-thru window. Now, I want to be fair to you. That is technically a vehicle. It has wheels. But the young man at the window who's making minimum wage and just wants his shift to end tells you, no bikes in the drive-thru. That's the rule. It's not personal. It's probably on a sign. And a normal person, the night at Chalupa at 3 in the morning says, fine, and pedals home to a sad bowl of cereal. Not you. You refuse to leave. You're so committed to this order that the employees have to call the police. Think about that. You created a hostage situation over a crunch wrap. These kids call 911 because a grown man on a bicycle would not go away. That is your legacy, sir. And then the police arrive and you're drunk, which, shockingly, I nearly fell out of my chair. And you're wearing a Swiss Army knife on your belt loop. like you're going to whittle something on the ride home. When the officer goes to take the knife for everybody's safety, what does your brilliant, beer-soaked brain decide? Grab the officer's arm. That's the move. That's what turns a go-home buddy into a felony. Because here's the difference, and I want you to hear me. Riding a bike drunk to Taco Bell, that's a Florida Tuesday. That's embarrassing, not criminal, but you grabbed a police officer, got wrestled to the ground, and earned yourself a resisting arrest with violence. It took a story that ends with you being gently set home and turned into a mugshot over a taco that you never even got. You didn't even get the food, sir. That's a tragedy. If it could blow up your whole night, at least come away with a burrito. You went to war and came back with handcuffs and an empty stomach. The knife has more sense than you did, and it's an inch long. Case dismissed, and walk your bike home next time. All right, well, that's AI Judge Judy. So everybody feels that perhaps AI is basically boding and warning us of the coming computer apocalypse. But at least we know the benign effect of AI Judge Judy on the distillation of the vagaries of Florida man from a legal perspective is actually not only spot on when it comes to the distillation of the law and its application either in a criminal or a civil setting, but it also is really, really funny. And I really enjoy doing it. And when it spits it out in 30 seconds, it makes me laugh. I hope it makes you laugh as well. Thanks for listening to the show. We definitely enjoy doing it. See you next week. And remember, for the best advice, don't think twice. Call Ashton and Price.
You've been listening to the All Things Legal Show with your host, Craig Ashton. For more information, go to ashtonandprice.com or call 916-786-7787. Go to Apple Podcast and download the show if you missed it. Remember, for the best advice, don't think twice. Call Ashton and Price.